nice too. My kids were.
Oh yeah, well, with my
Yeah.
kids, shit, we did more this year for Halloween than we've ever done. Angela and I both were like Sunday. I was like, I'm tired as hell. It wasn't even, Halloween hadn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Monday. I said, good Lord. My 4-year-old, he's at that perfect age.
Oh, that's the age. That's right. Yeah.
Still in awe of everything.
What do you?
Remember, you guys still need to be nearer.
What?
Well, not you.
Sandy,
Even
go back.
Sandy.
Sandy, you're good.
I've got 4:30.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me, tell us when you're ready. You were live?
I'd like to call to order the November 9 meeting of the Isle of Palms Planning Commission and acknowledge the press and public were duly notified in accordance with state law. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Do we have any motions?
I'd like to make a correction and then motion to be accepted as corrected. On the page 1 there at the very bottom, it says Director Kerr said that he and Zoning Administrator Kerr will.
Oh, thank you.
I think it was Matt.
Yes, I think so.
Sims,
I will change that. Thank you.
That's all. I was reading through that. How did he get to do that twice?
He wears many hats.
He's busy.
Busy.
Move to accept is corrected.
Have a motion. Any seconds?
Second.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So our first order of business, why we're here, is to discuss recommendations for a new PRD amendment to Wild Dunes. And Douglas, would you like to get us started on?
Yes, yeah, I'll give just kind of a summary of what's in your packet, description of what the expectations are from the Planning Commission, and then we'll just go from there and open it up for your discussion. There are 5 ordinances in your packet, and those ordinances, in short, have the effect of reducing the Wild Dunes ability to develop down to their current levels today. So there could be no additional dwelling units or in units added beyond what's approved today. And the golf courses would be changed to become part of the CR district, which is conservation recreation. In your packet is the pertinent code sections that should guide the Planning Commission's recommendations. Also, I've pulled out portions of the comp plan for you to consider. Any, at kind of a high level, any questions about that?
The only question that I've got, when we say we're limiting to the current numbers, are there any vacant single-family lots still remaining in Wild Dunes, and would they be protected or be allowed to?
Yes, yeah, so I should have clarified that the counts that are established in these codes allow for any existing lots, residential lots that have already been subdivided. Those would continue to be allowed to be built upon. This would be no future subdivisions or hotel rooms.
And the commercial recreation district, you omitted the tennis courts. I don't know if that's a part of that same district.
Yes, yes,
As
the
well as the
tennis-
parking tennis pavilion.
That's correct. The tennis courts would also be part of that district, and the text of that amendment clarifies that tennis facilities would be an allowable use in that CR district. That's so, at kind of a conceptual level, that's what's being proposed, that there are 5 ordinances, but really all 5 ordinances work together to achieve those 2 things. Change the golf courses to a CR district and lower the allowable number of units down to their current levels. If there are no questions about that, we'll just kind of go through procedurally what's happened so far, what would happen next. This ordinance came from City Council. They have now held first reading. They held first reading. They have held 2 public hearings on the matter, one here, one at the rec center. Those were well attended. I think that I distributed the link to those videos that you could watch. This group has received numerous emails about the changes. Those emails would be, just so you all know, because it's a little bit unusual to receive that amount of public comment. Those would be become part of the public record for what you all are doing. I think at most recent count there were 68 different sets of comments that you all have received. You procedurally have 30 days to give a recommendation to City Council. If you don't give a recommendation within that 30 days, you will have been deemed to have recommended approval. But my hope would be that if you all need additional information, that you would let me know what you need to make a recommendation. We could fairly quickly get that turned around and if necessary, have a special meeting or however you all see fit to proceed. But time is definitely of the essence. There's this statutory limit of 30 days, so can't deliberate kind of too long. And if the will of the group is to make a recommendation.
I have a question about the 30 days. Does it start from today, or does it
That's-
start from first reading?
It starts from today.
Even if council brought it up, it starts
That's
from
correct. Yeah, that's,
today.
we've received clarity that today would be the start of that clock. You don't have to take 30 days, you can be as quick as you would like to be, as quick as you feel comfortable, and I would urge you, identify the issues. If you do need more information, identify those and get, turned around quickly. Like I said, clearly, there's interest in the matter, and I think there's just an interest in having it. Having said that, if council if you all needed more than 30 days, the statute would allow council to extend your 30 days.
I don't think we need 30 days. It's the difference between 30 and 1,
Yeah.
so.
So if I could, I just went through all the ordinances, all 5, and it seems the first one, 08, creates the new zoning district.
Yeah, and it actually it does create a new zoning district. And if you look at the map, it has much of the area of that district is the old CO district. So it was called the Conservation District. That was an overlay district, and it included all of the marshlands and all of the kind of critical areas around the island. So that CO district is going away. It's being replaced by this CR district, and then it's being expanded to include the golf courses and the tennis facilities.
But isn't that also part of 09, which is the rezoning of parts of CO to become CR?
Correct.
I'm just wanting to, because there are 5 of them, and they're all kind of together.
Yes.
Number 10 amends the zoning map. That,
So that would become the new map.
right. And then ordinance 11 is the one that restricts the limits or modifies the limit. And then there's exclusions in 12, that's a little bit beyond me. But that's the one that actually talks about the unit numbers. Is that,
So yes, number 10 actually identifies the parcels specifically that are being rezoned.
Right.
And that has all the plats as the exhibits to
Correct.
that. And 11,
Just wanted to make that order kind of clear. So that
yes,
we
and
can get
11
down to the
has the
subjective
effect
stuff.
of actually reducing the numbers down.
Right. So that's the objective stuff, and we need to just talk about the subjective stuff. Does anybody want to start?
So the council made this recommendation for these modifications originally in September. Is that what I read?
That would have been first reading, correct. They wouldn't have made a recommendation, but they have passed it for first reading, and then they've held 2 separate public hearings. That's correct.
Is there a plan to develop any of these from the owner of the subject property?
We don't have a straight kind of answer to that. We have heard that there are plans. I can tell you that nothing has been submitted to the building department. Nothing is, been presented that I'm aware of. But there has been kind of ideas that there would be plans or there could be plans.
If I may, with the first reading, does that in essence stop any future presentation of plans?
Yes. So the once council advertised their intention to do this, and they specifically invoked what's called the pending ordinance doctrine, which has the effect of stopping my office from being able to issue permits if they're contrary to those ordinances. So right now we're operating in a situation where the pending ordinance doctrine would keep me from issuing building permits for anything outside of what's allowed in these codes.
So we're in limbo with the developer until such time as some action is moved forward
Yeah, yes, I think so.
By council, what I'm
Right.
referencing. Has Wild Dunes, the developer, asked to speak with the city and meet with the city to negotiate a position on their behest?
So they have not spoken to at any of the public hearings or any of the public meetings. I have talked directly with them personally. There has not been any. There still is not a plan that's been submitted or talked about. But as kind of procedurally, how the process goes through, we have reached out to them, informed them about what's happening. We know that they clearly are watching the process. They are aware of what's going on. So we have had discussions with them. The staff has.
Is there a need to act quickly and have a second reading?
Well,
It's up to city council to decide.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, there is a requirement that this group act within 30 days. So I guess my answer would be there is a need for you all to act fairly quickly.
And we have multiple choices from which to act. We can take no action.
Right.
We can decline. We can accept maybe 1 out of 5 or all 5. I mean, we have a lot of things that nobody's really talked about some of those alternatives or what that might mean in terms of what our action might be. Or we can suggest an amendment to the amendments.
Correct.
As I understand it. The amended zoning ordinance, to me, I feel this has been fast-tracked, and in some instances, I feel like it's been forced on us without a whole lot of presentation or facts and no discussion on the part of the parties involved. Sort of smacks of the SCDOT painting the connector. I didn't like it when they did that. I don't feel good about the way that this thing is moved, the speed at which it's moved, and I don't see the urgency or the need to make a snap decision to accept all of these right away. My other concerns is that knowing what happened in Mount Pleasant with Wheeland Homes and Mount Pleasant, did Mount Pleasant have the right to do what they did? Absolutely. Do we have the right to do what we're proposing doing? Absolutely. How much are you willing to pay? A lot. I'm not sure
I
everybody's
don't
in
think we're
that same
limiting
chair.
anything here, Sandy.
Pardon me?
I don't think we're taking away any rights here. We're not, we're just saying, for what I see in these documents, that instead of them being able to develop at will on the small amount that they have, nobody's saying they can't do that. All they're saying, these ordinances are saying is that they have to submit and apply for a rezoning.
And that's happened how many times?
Well, they have never had to do that.
No, other people have, though. I'm not arguing the property rights issue. What I'm saying is, do we know all the consequences of our action? What are the tax implications moving forward? What is the implication of the resort in overall management later on as a result of this? We're basically hitting the bear with a 2x4 down there and saying no, 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 and no. I don't know what the implications are of all of this. It concerns me. Much like the lease down at the marina, I think that we rushed into some of that. I don't know if that was an excellent process down there. I'm suggesting we take some time, allow city council and the powers that be at Wild Dunes to meet and talk and work this thing through. What's the harm? Nobody can do anything. What's the harm? That's my point.
I think the harm is not so much from the ordinances, but from what people have been speaking out loud and clearly. They want more discussion. They don't want to go into limbo, and they're looking at us to, give them some sort of affirmation. I think waiting beyond 30 days is unreasonable.
So,
I'm not suggesting wait 30 days. I'm suggesting we make a recommendation that council wait and negotiate this and talk with the
What are you going to
developer and
negotiate?
figure it out.
What would you negotiate? What's there to negotiate?
You're hitting them with a 2x4 by closing down their right that they currently have today to build units.
Well,
We're not
additional
closing down
units.
that right.
They have
Yes,
the-
we are.
They have
No,
the
we're
right to
not.
file.
Show me where they can,
Did-
it says in the ordinances that they can get permission to build like they have today.
We're not taking away their right to build.
Yes, we are.
No.
Douglas, can we go just a half a step back on history? I mean, of how we got to where we are. I mean, up until now, if they wanted to do something in the resort area because it was a PRD, you had very limited ability to modify, change, or I don't use the word prevent, but have open discussion with them about, no, you can't do that, or
That's
no,
correct.
you need parking, you need more roads. You haven't had that ability.
that's correct. Yeah, this framework of the PRD dates back to the mid-70s, and it had what I have kind of always at a staff level called golden rules. I mean, there's a lot of information in there about the covenants and how the community association will work, and a lot of things that the city doesn't really have direct control over. But there were a number of golden rules in there, and one of the keys was the ultimate complete number of units, that there was a ceiling established at 2,500 residential units and 350 in-rooms. And to your point, there was a lot of flexibility in that document as long as they didn't run afoul of these golden rules that would allow them to build, that would build up to that point.
But
And I think
none of the golden rules included infrastructure or parking or other things. It was really just based on number of units, wasn't it?
pretty much. I mean, there was some stuff on there about
So
the number of stories, but yeah, I
Right
think
now, if
that's
the marina restaurant wants to build a restaurant, they have to have a certain number of parking spaces by zoning. But when the hotel built, did they have to submit that where our 800 employees are gonna park?
No, no,
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify the facts.
yeah, they had very loose sets of rules because they are,
Okay.
50 years old. And to kind of back up to Sandy's point, I would say that this ordinance does have the effect, or these ordinances do have the effect of limiting their ability to develop. Suzanne, you're correct. They could, I mean, if this were to go through and become law, they could petition the city to rezone and to re-amend the ordinance to allow them to do what they want to do. But as it stands today, without this amendment, they do have the rights to build that. And if these amendments are enacted, they would not have that right.
But correct me, I'm sorry, correct me, I can be wrong, but there's really also two different scenarios. What's inside the PRD is very tight, is gonna fall into what you're talking about. But there's also the property outside the PRD, outside the gate, that is not covered at all by the PRD.
That's correct.
So when we rezone, if that gets rezoned, they could come in with a fairly normal zoning request and say, we want to take that and not make it a golf course and turn those acres into something else.
Yeah,
So they're going to be regulated very differently, one under the PRD still and one under a normal zoning requirement.
Yes. Yeah, the portion that is adjacent to Waterway Boulevard,
Right.
outside of the gate, is currently zoned SR1. It's the city's standard. If you look at that map, it's the yellow area. That's low-density residential development. Currently, the minimum lot size in that area is 35,000 square feet per lot. So they could come in today, or they could have prior to this ordinance being pending, and provided a plan that shows those golf courses being changed to fairly large residential lots, come to this group for subdivision approval. You all, as long as it met the letter of the law, would be bound to approve that.
I
This
just wanted to
would
clarify, 'cause
change
a lot of
that.
people think this is just an inside the gates issue. It's not.
No, you're
It's all the
correct.
properties outside the gates. Sorry, David, I cut you off.
And historically, too, we rezoned a portion of Wild Dunes already, the upper 50s lots that left Wild Dunes became SR3. So this is not something new. What I would say that by rezoning, it does force the developer, should he want to develop, let's say, any of the golf courses for new zoning, would that not give the city the opportunity to negotiate? The biggest concern, well, there are many concerns. Some of those of us who live outside the gate, is traffic along Palm Boulevard, traffic along the bridge. The fine town that was mentioned earlier, if somebody wanted to make that kind of a zoning adjustment or do a planned development, would make them do some infrastructural improvements, such as widening a highway, putting in traffic lights, adding a bridge. And those might be considerations that the city might make if a developer wanted to rezone his other 200 single-family lots wherever he could find space. Personally, I'm certainly not in opposition to this. What my concern is how to couch it in a way that is purposeful and meaningful and not just about parking. It's kind of one of those arguments, or not parking, but traffic. Those kind of issues are kind of tertiary. You need something, I've been trying to find some legal or more legal teeth to sink into as a way of enforcing this ordinance for the opportunity when the lawyers come out. We have something to back us up in our decision other than we have a right to change zoning, and our island's pretty dense. I mean, we've been using that excuse for years and it didn't get us anywhere. We also feel a little bitten by the convention center. There are the loss of, I haven't counted how many tennis courts. Again, I'm not a tennis player or a member, but that certainly, one, looks horrible, and two, I know has upset a lot of tennis players who don't have the courts available to play. But I do enter the construction gate because the city hasn't given us decals for the front gate. So I use the construction gate where, 40, 50 cars are parked along Palm Boulevard, and those are people who obviously are working at the convention center, not the people building it as it was 3 or 4 years ago. So those are things that affect the whole community, not just Wild Dunes. But driving through Wild Dunes, getting caught at that darn traffic light at the convention center, the traffic light, the three-way stop, just the congestion there, just the amount of people, it's a nightmare. And so that kind of density, if they were, conjecture, turn the Harbor Course clubhouse into the other 53-bedroom inn, where do you park those cars? Where do all those people walk and go? And, getting back to the convention center where everything was going to be self-contained, no one would ever have to leave. That's not what people do. There are car trips that were underestimated by their traffic engineer when they were trying to sell us. So, I've got myself a little bit of concern over, future negotiations with them, and would like to have some upper hand. And I would think rezoning would force them to have to come to us to negotiate a little bit more, giving us the upper hand as opposed to having a negotiation. No, we have no plans. Next thing you know, boom, we've got plans.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Ron.
So I would just, I think I would first say that I think what you're saying in terms of changing the rules now to kind of stop it at the status quo would certainly put the ball in their court to come forward to the city to, unlock, for lack of a better term, but to change the zoning to allow what they're proposing if it meets, if it meets the standards and guidance and principles of the city. That would be a decision for the city to make at that time. So I think you're right about that. I would like to, we've talked a little bit about kind of, the legal ramifications. We do have on the agenda an executive session if there are legal questions. We have attorneys available if there are legal questions. From my standpoint, though, I would just guide the Planning Commission to, just remember that the council is the one that ultimately will make this decision. They are, they've been advised by their legal counsel on the legal ramifications of rezoning. I would urge this group, as I kind of always have, to put your technical hats on and consider, your guidance and the codes, the comp plan. You've been working diligently on updating that comp plan, so we've had a lot of discussions about things like transportation, environmental impacts. So you all have been having those discussions. So I would look at this change through that technical lens. And again, if you need additional information, let me know what that is, and we can, if you would need that to make a recommendation. But I would advise you to, not worry as much about the kind of legal challenges that could come of this, and look at it through your role as a planning commissioner and the guidance that's given to you through our comp plan and ordinances.
Well, I think going in that direction, it's the ordinances that we're looking at fall within the comp plan that we're doing. There's not one portion of it that it doesn't fit into our objectives and goals. It's consistent with the resiliency plan we're working on too, especially on the back part of the island. So unless somebody wants to add something to it without going through it section by section, it does fit into our objectives and goals.
So somebody was brought it up earlier for the portion, the golf course outside of the gate. It's on the map as a red area. So it's
As a changed area, correct, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of your maps does highlight the changes in red.
Yep.
The official zoning map would be that, and it And it
So that
changes
parcel's
from-
included in this.
That's correct. It
It's-
changes from yellow to white with black hash marks, which would be the CR district.
I guess it's this tract G, block A of the exhibits. It looks like it's the, I don't know, there's a bunch.
Off of Waterway Boulevard. That's the section.
Yeah, it looks like it's covering it all pretty good. I just wanted to clarify that every bit of that is covered in what we're trying to do here.
That's correct. Yeah. As it's
Out islands.
Yeah.
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
I was asking about the out islands.
Yeah.
That was my question.
David, you
was
asked the same question. So
Why we weren't including those, because we assume they can't be developed right now, but we don't know future-wise, if somebody figures out and wants to run a tram out to one of those islands and build on it, we have no control over that at the current time. So why would we not include
So
those?
the out,
Same issues that would apply to those, I would think.
yeah, so just a little point of reference on the out islands, that was considered when the conservation overlay district was originally created. And those islands were specifically held out because they were larger than 2 acres. And I think the fear is that if you took all use of those properties, it would be potentially problematic. So they were left out of the CO district, so they're left out of the CR district. But there would be, because part of these ordinances is lowering the number of units that can be built down to what's been approved today. If it were the intent, and I think that it is, that the intent that one building, one house could be built on each island, that would have the effect of increasing the number of allowable units by 3 from what we've had today. And David sent me that comment via email. I forwarded that to the city's attorneys who are drafting that ordinance, and I think that's a valid point, that probably the number of allowable units should be increased by 3 to account for those 3 islands that are larger than 2 acres.
Well, again, I think I sent this one to you too. Concern was, we're looking at what's existing today, but nothing's saying that 10 years from now, that one of the hotels does not get torn down and replaced with a hotel with bigger rooms, for lack of they can't increase the number of rooms, but they can increase the capacity. And that kind of pertains back to these other properties that, again, if we're talking about that the city currently has no control over what somebody plans in the future. It may not be feasible now or economical to do it now, but we don't know what the future holds. And it's kind of like, 20 years ago, nobody would have said somebody's going to buy 3 lots and divide them into 4. It just doesn't make sense. But until it happens, and then we're in a reactive mode where if we're going to do this, why would we not include those? We're not taking away somebody's chance to come back and have them rezone later. We're just having the city have the say on what would get done in those. So that was kind of my concern in these, is I didn't think we went far enough into what we were considering moving into the conservation district.
But once it's created, you can add parcels in future. It doesn't prevent us from moving forward, that this is all inclusive at this point.
Well, it would require a rezoning to add additional
It would require
parcels.
rezoning, but I mean, even one of the comment letters, we got so many comments that were outstanding. One of them raised at that point more in a debating way, saying, well, why aren't you including, and they rattled off 6 or 7 or 8 other parcels. We don't have to right now, though, yes, it would require rezoning, but once you create the district, we can go back later and say, okay, the out islands or the parks the city owns or other places can be moved into that zoning district.
Yeah. That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. David, to go back to your question, so the way that the 5 ordinances are drafted, you're correct. If they were to take down a 100-room hotel, these ordinances would allow them to rebuild a new 100-room hotel, but with larger rooms. It could also allow them some flexibility to put it on a different site if they chose. I don't know that But it would not, as it's written today, it wouldn't allow additional units to be built. So they couldn't go build a new hotel out on the out islands as it's drafted today. They'd have to tear down the existing hotel to be able to do that. So if anything, I think to me, the out islands are really covered. And if anything, it probably has gone where we have stated the intention of leaving it at the currently allowed units. I think, in my opinion, we're 3 shy because we have not accounted for 3 units out in the out islands. I doubt that there, I mean, I don't know, but I would think that if they tear down a 100-room hotel, they're going to put it back in that commercial core and not out on a remote island. But it's a good
But
comment.
again, that
It's
was,
possible.
again, we was just trying to foresee was if they took down a 100-room hotel, put a 50-room hotel in that place, and then another 50-room hotel or condominium complex for that matter. Nothing that we're doing today would stop that.
Well, the condos, I mean, again, that's a dwelling unit, so they would have to give up
But if they
an
take out
existing dwelling unit somewhere.
one-bedroom condos, replace them with 3-bedroom condos on the same site, and then free up
Be
additional
larger.
space. And again, we don't.
That's something that this group deals with every house. You know, where there's a 2-bedroom house on a lot, they're getting torn down and replaced with much larger units, and that's true for every unit on the island, really, that they could be, as long as it's not an additional unit, a larger structure could replace any existing small structure in Wild Dunes, outside of Wild Dunes, kind of island-wide.
Isn't there a height limitation?
Yes.
40 feet.
Yeah, okay.
50 in Wild Dunes.
I think Wild Dunes is 40.
Yeah,
I
40.
think they have a little more flexibility.
Residentially, but I think
Residential.
condos,
Oh,
commercial. has
Yeah,
a
the
little-
commercial areas are,
And they used to not enforce. Is Dave around? No.
commercial
enforce
areas
now.
are much higher. I mean, they end up with what I would call a 7-story building, but the PRD specifically exempts ground floor and top small floors.
Okay.
So that it calls them 5 stories, but
And another point too, the document of their PUD, PRD, PD, whatever we're calling it, drafted 50 years ago, they kind of itemized out the N units from residential units. So theoretically, a condo would be a residential unit, but in fact, the way we inhabit condos today, they're condotels, which make them really in-rooms. So I think we're identifying a density, but now just because things have changed and how we live and how this island has evolved, everything has become an in-room. I mean, so just all that density, I think, was perhaps unseen, unforeseeable, but it certainly was happened. And that's why we're all at this choking point, or possibly why we're at this choking point. So those other 200 or so residential units, if there was room in one of the condos to do another wing, I mean, there's a theoretical possibility to do that, if they could find parking, or maybe that doesn't matter.
yeah, we have thought about kind of when these unit numbers were agreed upon back in the 70s, and if you looked at the average development size of what initially started there on kind of those, what are they, sand crab, those kind of smaller houses as you come in. Clearly what got developed later and still only took up 1 dwelling unit is a much larger house with a much higher kind of total density than what would have been contemplated in a very small kind of tiny beach house from the 70s. So, I mean, I think that's a valid point, that what's been allowed to be constructed today probably houses as many, if not more people than what the PRD contemplated back in the 70s.
Well, prior to the PRD, the density was somewhere near 10,000, not 2,500,
Right.
which was what was restrictive of
That's
the
right.
PRD with all the open space. Do you know, Douglas, by changing the golf course to a single-use conservation easement, recreation usage unit only, is that going to affect the taxes on those properties from 6% to some lesser value? I mean, if you give your land to a you can, put it into a conservation easement acreage, you usually get a pretty nice tax break and lowered taxes because you've done that. Is that going to be the case with what we're doing with this?
I have not heard of any plan to put it into a conservation easement. So I don't know that would happen. The owner potentially could choose, I guess, to do that. And I will say that, the existing, we talked about the PRD and the golden rules. One of those golden rules is that they maintain a certain amount of acreage of open space, and that's been in there. That's from the original document. If you do the math, it's
You sent out, go ahead.
yeah. If you do the math and the I think if you would get different figures if you hired 5 different engineers. They'd probably give you different in terms of exactly how many acres is currently open. But it's a large amount of open space that's required by that existing PDD document. So I don't know if that's already worked into the tax bill where the assessor knows that they have to maintain several hundred acres of open space. I don't know. I don't know what's, what they're, I think that that's probably taxed as the rate of a golf course. I mean, I think I don't believe they're paying an exorbitant amount because of there's some future potential, but I don't know that for certain.
The memo, I'm sorry, I've been looking for it for a while. Got a few emails this week.
At least 68.
At least. So that memo, the letter from WDCA,
Yep.
is that part of the public record for?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the interesting questions to me that they raised was the number 3, were other island properties outside the PRD considered? Yada, yada. And the answer being, yeah, we could, but not currently. So does anybody foresee this as being a sticking point? If we move forward as is, it already seems like a fair rebuttal to what we're proposing.
So
Crystal ball.
Yeah, I think that a lot of, the examples that were given all have structures on them, so if you were to have a district that allowed structures like rec centers or the site that the county park has, this group would need to develop standards for setbacks and lot coverage and all those kinds of things, which the way it's drafted, it just didn't contemplate that. So it would be an additional layer of, I guess, complexity and work to develop standards to allow buildings, which just isn't the way, when this was originally kind of contemplated, it's not the way it was thought up and drafted to allow that. It could be done, I think legally the text could be amended to allow those things and then come up with the standards, but it's not in there now. I don't know that it provides, I guess from my standpoint, I don't think it provides much benefit to the focus of, what these ordinances were drafted to achieve, but it could be done. I think that, and I don't know if it was, I know that point has been raised before. It's not currently written that way, but it could.
Yeah, I just see that coming up again. I mean, the point being to treat those other properties the same way as we're proposing. And I guess to Sandy's original point, you know, if that's something that should be done, it's gonna take more time to develop.
But even within the Wild Dunes open area requirements for recreation, they allow themselves to have clubhouses, restaurants, tee boxes, sales of food and beverage. So it may not be inconsistent. I really can't recall any of those things happening in those golf courses outside of the gates.
So the parcels that hold those structures were not included
Oh, okay.
in these lots currently. The only structures are there is the kind of hidden maintenance sheds, the golf maintenance shed that's kind of in the middle of the golf course, so that parcel. But those are the only structures. Those true kind of commercial clubhouse type structures are not in this district. So that would be that's kind of the difference. I think we have treated like the rec center just as we've treated the golf course clubhouse, left them out of this district to keep the district truly an open space. You know, not have a district that has structures in it and parking lots and things like that.
Douglas, you've worked with the water and sewer company, and I know that they're building a new plant to accommodate sewage, in particular down on 41st Street. Do you know if they had planned to build that to accommodate the 350 and the 50 hotel rooms?
It's my understanding that it is not in their current plans. That you know, they've told us kind of time and time again that plant, the shell of that plant is being built so that they could insert additional waste capacity by way of cartridges, but that their plan did not include these additional units.
Just simply what's on the books.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Now, also, in going back to the original PUD agreement, in their table, they have a highland area of about 950 acres, 430 of which were supposed to be planned open spaces. That's almost 50%. It doesn't feel that there's 50% of open area in Wild Dunes, you know.
Well, that space got carved down, and part of it was itemized in the original 1975 PRD, but then it got reduced down in the 77 amendment, and the ultimate allotment for open space that was truly in the golf courses and what they call recreation areas was 299. Okay. So it did start, you know, initially a lot. It's gradually been kind of whittled down through amendments.
So would you assume that what they've got in those amenities equal that amount of open space?
We think it's compliant.
Yeah.
Today, and yeah. Again, I mean, we've kind of talked about the looseness in which you can interpret just impervious ground cover. You'll see that it's not limited to wet areas. Right. So lagoons are clearly allowed as a pervious surface. So it kind of stands to reason. Do you include marshes? There's several ways. There's not a lot of detail on how that would be figured.
Right, ways along our roads and some of the other things.
Is the property included? I just can't tell from the map. I don't know the area well enough. Is it where the waste facility used to be? Is that included in this?
No, that is outside of the new district.
So what's to become of that?
They are going to maintain. So there is the majority of that property is taken up with a lake, and that lake is necessary. That's the effluent from the system. It goes to that holding lake, and then it's attached to the irrigation. The effluent is used to irrigate the golf courses. So that lake will continue to stay. The actual facility, the wastewater facility, goes away. We've had very conceptual discussions with the Water and Sewer Commission about what they'll do with that highland. There will at least be a very large pump there to take the place of the plant. And I think they've said that the rest of the space they will use as storage.
It's owned by the.
It's owned by the Water and
It's
Sewer
not
Commission. Yeah.
A Wild Dunes.
Okay.
And they would have to maintain ownership at least of the pump and the lake. You know, there is some high ground there, but it's not an enormous amount.
Water and Sewer Commission could build condos there.
Okay.
I'd like to restate that I don't fully agree with some of the folks that want to rush this through. I think that we're in a good spot right now. I'd like to engage the city in Wild Dunes, have them engage in a conversation. I don't see any harm in that, and something could be gained. I think that the gain would be that we don't avoid a lawsuit. Lawsuits are a no-win for everyone except for perhaps some of the attorneys involved. They can't do anything as long as we've had first reading. We've kind of hashed out some of the questions here. Again, I'd like to understand what the ramifications are and what Wild Dunes' true intent are. I don't believe that their intentions are to build 350 units. They don't have the space down there, but what might be a reasonable a number? Is there a reasonable number? Or is everybody so adamant that it's no, no, no? I'd like to keep that door open and have a meeting of the minds.
But Sandy, a counter to that is, I don't think that's what we're being asked to do right now. We've been asked by council to look at these 5 ordinances. We're not really being asked to say, put these on hold and we want you to negotiate, council. So I think we should look at these 5 ordinances in the time frame they've asked us. If we have legitimate questions and say, I need more information, that's fine. But I mean, we've had them for 30 days. We've got a lot of information. It's not that hard to understand these. We've all had the documents. We've got some, the legal people have told us where we stand. So to me, the issue is, I understand your position, but we as a planning commission aren't being asked to say, we want you to negotiate, council. What we're being asked to say is, we've got 5 ordinances in front of us. Do we recommend that you do that? Now, if we make the recommendation, that doesn't mean they're approved. They can take that recommendation and say, now we as a council, not we as a planning commission, we as a council want to go to negotiate. Personally, I don't want them to do that. But our role here is to look at these 5 and move them forward. Now, if we don't have information to do that, then fine, let's take some more time. I personally have enough information. We've had these in our hand for 30 days since the first reading. So I look at our mission is to look at these and make a decision up or down and make a recommendation to council, not to negotiate. That's not what our role is as a planning commission. Just my thoughts.
And I think to echo that, I would say that the city's code dictates that this group is quick. And that is derived obviously from the state code. So I think Steve's correct that wouldn't be the planning commission's role to do that. I think if you all, as has been stated, would look at it through the technical lens, make a recommendation. Council may take more time. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but that's really, I think, for them to decide.
I mean, of the 350 emails or more that I've read, and the people in this room, they can go to council and say, we don't want you to do this, we want you to go, but that's not our role. Our role is to look at this from a technical planning point of view and give a thumbs up or thumb down for a second reading. Council may decide they're not going to do a second reading, they're not going to approve it. That's not our role. And everyone in this room and all the people that send emails can call them and debate that with council, not necessarily with us. Go ahead, sorry.
Has this been fully, I'm assuming it has, but I'll just ask, has it been fully vetted with our legal counsel, these ordinances as they're written for holes?
They've been drafted by our legal counsel.
Okay.
And again, I mean, we have them here if you want to have an executive session and ask legal questions. Wouldn't be any deliberation, but if you have legal questions about any part of it, they're certainly here and able to answer those.
There's been a lot of feedback from all the emails. I believe almost every one of them was in. It's not a public forum, but maybe a show of hands of people in the audience who may have a neighbor who would be against the moving forward of these amendments. If you would raise your hand, if you have a neighbor such as that. Any individual who would admit to that. I'm just curious.
And following up on my other thought, I mean, I guess I want to finish my comment with the question, looking at you, the rest of us, do you guys have more information you need? Like I said, I personally don't, but I'm only one person here. If you guys have more information, speak up, and, we can get it to Douglas, he'll get it for us, and we can have a special meeting.
I think
absent that-
the only information that we're lacking is from the developer,
Right,
and we're not going to get that.
right.
So I agree with you, Steve.
Who is the gentleman who drafted that letter from the W?
He's
Cape
the
Cross.
administrator of the
Homeowners.
WDCA.
Yeah, the Community Association General Manager, Dave Kanowski, writing, I think, on behalf of the
WDCA,
board, his board.
right,
Which aren't the developers.
Right, that's the.
Gotcha.
right.
Okay.
That's the owners.
Yeah.
And it is the owners and the developer as the
Member of the
commercial
WDCA.
property owner, they're also on that board.
Right.
So all of the ownership interests within the community.
So I didn't hear anybody say that we need more information.
I kind of had a question for the attorney, actually, but that was,
Hopefully it doesn't require executive session, but go ahead.
well, it was more, again, the roles as a planning commission, we've talked about it, but it's not our job to determine what's the political side of this. This is more technical. Does it correspond with our comprehensive plan, and are we doing anything illegal in doing so? I think
Good question.
that my question was, does that fall on the planning commission or does that fall on city council?
We're just making a recommendation.
Right.
But we could go through the comp plan line item. Douglas sent that to us highlighted.
Right.
Right.
It would only take 30 minutes, but it will, I don't think there's anyone who would disagree that moving forward with, recommending moving forward would not be in conflict with the comp plan. It encourages or it's enforced by the comp plan.
This is Nicole, and she's been working with the city kind of from the beginning, and she may, I don't know that it would require executive session, David, if that's the extent of the question, Nicole, if you want to.
Yeah, and to the extent I understand your question, your role correctly, as has been stated, is to review this in light of the comp plan, whether it's consistent with the comp plan and other zoning ordinances that the city has adopted. And so it's a very limited role. And it's a recommendation, right? You're not a decision-making authority. Therefore, there's no concerns about liability and action that the planning commission may take, if that answers your question.
I think so, yes.
Okay. We can go into more
Yes.
detail in executive session if you want, but I do, I feel comfortable saying that on the record, so.
Okay. I'm good.
That being said, I want to make a motion that the planning commission make a recommendation to council to proceed to second reading for ordinances 2022, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and that they move forward to approval. That's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion
Sorry,
and a
who
second.
seconded the motion? Thank you.
I think Steve did.
Jeff
Sir.
did.
I mean,
Any other
so now we can discuss if
Comments
we
or
want further.
discussion? That's generally in Robert's rules.
Let's
what you do.
follow the rules, and more discussion if anyone wants it, but
We haven't voted in forever.
I know.
Would that be all in
Here they
favor?
have it.
No. But this is one of those things that we should.
Call for the vote.
Is there no other comment? Then we'll proceed to a vote, and I think we could just do a yay or nay, or show of hands. Show of hands. All those in favor of moving forward?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we recommend to city council that they move forward.
That was deemed enough work for you all that nothing else was put on the
That's
agenda.
all the agenda?
That's all we got.
That's it? Really? Motion to adjourn?
Does anybody,
Oh.
executive session is on the agenda? I don't know that you need it after a
I
recommendation.
think they did a great job answering generic questions.
don't-
None of my questions were, I thought required executive session, so thank you guys for answering in the way you did.
Yes.
All right.
Our
I don't have
next
any-
meeting,
Wait, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
December, second Wednesday of
Do we
December.
have a second?
Are you not here?
I'll second it. All in favor?
trying to think. I don't think I am. No, I'm not here.
December 7th.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the date?
December 2nd.
Have we adjourned
Oh,
yet?
we're good.
Yes, 5:30.
Do we have a vote?
We're off the record,
Yes.
5:30.
Okay, good.
December 7th? No, December 14th.
Party.
It would be the second, it'd be the
second
14th.
Wednesday.
The city
December
employee
14th.
party we're invited to.
I am here the 14th.
It's awfully close.
No, it was like, holy crap. Well, I think they didn't have it the last 2 years.